A white cat materialized on Sergeant Harper's shoulder during a chaotic lunar base evacuation. Its pristine fur and unblinking amber eyes seemed impossible in the smoke-filled corridors. Yet Sergeant Harper sensed there was nothing ordinary about this feline. Before he could shrug it off, that cat would change his life and the fate of everyone on Outpost Nova Epsilon forever. The year was 2278 CE, deep into humanity's expansion across the Alpha Centauri system. Outpost Nova Epsilon stood on a barren moon orbiting Proxima Centauri, serving as a forward communications relay and mining station for rare lunar crystals. The base itself was a dimly lit underground complex with corridors of reinforced steel, holographic status displays on every wall, and an omnipresent red glow from emergency lighting during drills. Above ground, the barren gray regolith was battered by solar radiation, but most activity unfolded in the subterranean levels. Sergeant Toby Harper, adjusted the half-empty oxygen tank clipped to his combat vest as he made his way through sublevel beta. He'd been on patrol for months now, and the exhaustion was starting to show. Still, he remained steady and mission-oriented. His ambition was simple: finish his service tour and enroll in orbital tech school. Once he had those credentials, he could land a civilian job on one of the more hospitable colonies. Maybe even get assigned to a deep space exploration vessel. Lieutenant Amara Lynn, the base commander, strode past him with her characteristic, purposeful gait. She was stern, but compassionate, and Harper had seen the way she'd gone above and beyond to ensure the safety of everyone under her command. He knew she had 2 young children back on Earth. Her desire to protect her team was deeply personal. "Harper, are the communication systems functioning optimally?" she asked, pausing briefly. "Yes, Lieutenant. Just completed the scheduled diagnostic. All channels clear." She nodded, satisfied. "Good. Maintain vigilance. I'm hearing chatter about Vraxian Skrell Alliance movements near the outer perimeter." Harper kept his expression neutral. Rumors of alien alliances probing human defenses had been circulating for weeks, but nothing concrete had materialized. "Understood, Lieutenant." As she continued down the corridor, the calm, gender-neutral voice of Helix, the Outpost AI, echoed through the speakers. "Initiating scheduled system check. All personnel, please stand by for momentary fluctuations in non-essential systems." Harper continued organizing the communications backhaul with Orbit 17 Command. The morale among the troops remained guardedly optimistic, despite the background chatter about potential alien threats. This was routine, just another day on Outpost Nova Epsilon. Then everything changed. Helix's voice crackled through the overhead speakers, no longer calm, but urgent. "Security breach detected. Northern perimeter compromised. Initiating general evacuation in 60 seconds. All personnel proceed to sublevel Gamma." Harper's training kicked in immediately. He grabbed his gear, secured his helmet, and rushed through the suddenly choked corridor. Sparks flickered from damaged panels, and alarms flashed angry red throughout the hallway. Civilians and soldiers scrambled past him in a chaotic rush for safety. Every corridor echoed with footsteps, shouted orders, and distant detonations. Pushing into a side corridor to avoid a collapsing ceiling panel, Harper nearly stumbled over what felt like soft fur brushing his calf. He looked down and was astonished to see a small, crystalline white cat hunkered against the wall. Its fur shimmered with lavender-silver highlights, and its unblinking amber eyes stared up at him with unnerving intelligence. Confusion gripped him. "How did a cat get behind our blast doors?" he muttered to himself. Before he could inspect further, an explosion shook the ground beneath his feet. Acting on instinct, Harper scooped up the cat and slipped it into his backpack's side pouch, thinking it must be an escaped experimental companion animal, and bolted toward the evacuation shaft. with Vraxian infiltration units known to masquerade as native lifeforms. Harper's single-minded mission to deliver critical communications became complicated by this mysterious feline. Could the cat be trusted? He couldn't afford distractions, but every instinct screamed that this cat's appearance was not accidental. Harper raced through smoke-filled corridors alongside Colonel Javi Ortega, the infantry commander, and Lieutenant Lin. The evacuation was in full swing, personnel streaming toward the designated safe zones, while security teams engaged with unknown hostiles on the northern perimeter. Colonel Ortega, a battle-hardened veteran with scars crisscrossing his face, glanced at Harper's pack and noticed a white paw emerge from the side pouch. "What are you hiding, Harper?" he demanded, his hand instinctively moving toward his sidearm. Before Harper could respond, a slender woman with close-cropped hair and wire-rimmed glasses stepped forward. It was Dr. Lena Faraday, the xenobiologist who had recently arrived to catalog potential alien lifeforms near the moon's surface. "Sergeant," she said with authority that belied her civilian status, "if that is a real cat, scanning its DNA signature is a priority. It could be xenofauna." Her eyes gleamed with scientific curiosity, but Harper hesitated. "With all due respect, Dr. Faraday, we're in the middle of an evacuation," Harper replied. "I need to maintain line of sight on the cat until I understand whether it's an infiltration unit." The tension was palpable. Military protocol wrestling with scientific curiosity in the midst of crisis. Helix displayed a holographic schematic of the base on a nearby console. The northern quadrant appeared in flames. "Communications arrays are offline," the AI informed them. "No secure channel to Orbit 17 is available. Recommend manual routing of messages through the lower-level satellite uplink." Lieutenant Lin assessed the situation quickly. "Time estimate until the next Vraxian strike?" she asked Helix. "Approximately 12 minutes, based on current trajectories," the AI responded. As they proceeded through a security checkpoint, Lieutenant Hayes, the tech specialist stationed there, ran a quick bioscan on Harper's backpack. The cat's readout appeared on his screen, and his eyes widened. "Sir, you need to see this," Hayes called to Colonel Ortega. "The scan shows aberrant readings, crystalline cellular structure, no known Earth DNA patterns. Even more concerning, its intellectual signature is flickering at frequencies outside human neuropatterns." Before anyone could react, the cat leaped from Harper's pack and trotted through the checkpoint's laser grid without triggering a single alarm. The assembled soldiers and technicians stared in disbelief as ghostly paw prints glowed faintly on the metal floor in the cat's wake. Everyone recoiled, convinced that the cat must be an advanced infiltration unit. Colonel Ortega raised his weapon. "Neutralize it," he ordered. "Wait!" Dr. Faraday interposed herself between the colonel and the cat. "This could be a first contact scenario. We have protocols for this." She turned to Lieutenant Lin, appealing to her authority. "If this entity wanted to harm us, it would have done so already. Look at how it's navigating our security systems without triggering them." The cat sat down calmly, began grooming itself as if no crisis existed around it. After a tense moment, Lieutenant Lin nodded. "Dr. Faraday, you have my permission to accompany Sergeant Harper and the cat. Your scientific protocols demand observation, but I insist you take security personnel." Colonel Ortega wasn't pleased, but acquiesced to his superior's order. "Fine, but if that thing makes one suspicious move, my men have orders to fire." He assigned 2 soldiers to accompany them. They proceeded to Sublevel Alpha's communications vault, under intermittent fire from unseen enemies. The cat remained oddly calm throughout, grooming itself, even as bullets peppered the walls around them. The corridor leading to the communications vault was a death trap. Ventilation shafts sucked in smoke, making breathing difficult even with filtration masks. Overhead, speakers distorted Helix's announcements into garbled warnings. Suddenly, A squad of Vraxian shock troopers burst in, clad in obsidian exoskeletons that made them look like giant, anthropomorphic insects, with neural implants glowing beneath their carapaces. Harper and Colonel Ortega engaged in hand-to-hand skirmishes, while Dr. Faraday worked to hack the vault door remotely. The Vraxians moved with terrifying coordination, their neural implants linking them into a tactical hive mind. While they fought, the White Cat padded across a jumble of wires and consoles with preternatural grace. Every time Dr. Faraday tried to isolate the feline for scanning, it pressed a paw on a hidden console button, eventually closing the vault door behind them with an unbreakable sealed barrier. Everyone realized with growing shock that the cat was manipulating technology. But how? Inside the vault, Dr. Faraday flicked on a jury-rigged subdisplay. The cat, now perched on a console, locked eyes with Harper. Suddenly, a voice echoed in his mind. "You hesitate to trust, soldier. My presence is the only thing keeping your systems online." Harper staggered backward, nearly falling. Dr. Faraday looked at him with concern, fumbling for her comm module. "Toby, did you just talk in your helmet?" The cat's gaze flickered between them. "I am Whiskers, an interdimensional observer. The resonator device has been activated below. If I do not guide you, this entire moon will be split in two." The telepathic communication felt like cool water flowing through Harper's mind. Alien, yet somehow familiar. He struggled to process what was happening as Helix's voice came through a nearby console. "Resonator signature detected in Reactor Bay Delta, sublevel Sigma, power fluctuations at 3.14 gigawatts. The console's holographic map highlighted a path through maintenance tunnels that would take them directly to the source. Colonel Ortega, who had not heard the telepathic message, protested the idea of sending only Harper and Dr. Faraday. "We must send a team. Vraxians will have secured that bay." The cat, Whiskers, fixed its gaze on Ortega. The colonel's expression suddenly changed, his eyes widening as if seeing something terrible. "Mass war is imminent if the resonator goes online," he murmured. Then looked at Harper with newfound respect. "You'd better know what you're doing, Sergeant." He begrudgingly allowed Harper and Dr. Faraday to proceed while he secured the vault. In a heartbeat of telepathic vision, Harper glimpsed Earth's destruction, magnetic storms, gravitational anomalies, entire continents erased from existence. He felt a pang of guilt and responsibility. If he failed, every soldier he'd ever served with and his family back on Luna Base would perish. Harper and Dr. Faraday crawled through a dusty maintenance shaft, the cat navigating them via mental directions. Every rumble from above signaled a new Vraxian militia on patrol. Tension peaked as a plasma-charged shell slammed into the hatch behind them. Harper's suit alarms shrieked warnings about atmospheric contamination. "We're close," Dr. Faraday whispered, checking a handheld scanner. "The energy readings are off the charts." They emerged into the reactor antechamber, ablaze with erratic light from the half-constructed resonator. Massive, opalescent rings rotating above a glowing blue-white core. Vraxian shock troopers held the perimeter, feeding power cables into the resonator's core with methodical precision. "What now?" Harper whispered, assessing their slim chances against a dozen heavily armed Vraxians. Whiskers leapt into the open, expanding in midair into a 3-meter-tall biometallic entity. White, crystalline plating, shifting to translucent armor that refracted light in impossible ways. It telepathically warned Harper, "I can shut this down, but only if I link with this device directly. It may consume me." Battle erupted instantly. Harper fired his sidearm into Vraxian leg implants, targeting the neural connections that gave them their coordinated advantage. Dr. Faraday deployed an EMP pulse device to disable their neural nets. The shock troopers staggered momentarily, but one quickly recovered, aiming a plasma rifle directly at Harper. Harper dived forward, pulling the towering Whiskers behind a half-constructed shielding barrier as plasma fire sizzled past them. The air smelled of ozone and burning metal. Whiskers extended a crystalline limb toward the resonator's core, causing the gyroscopic rings to slow their rotation. A deafening resonance rippled outward, the air distorted around them like heat waves on a summer day. Whiskers' form flickered between feline and towering observer, a battle-scarred silhouette of translucent energy struggling to maintain cohesion. The Vraxians, recognizing the threat to their weapon, converged on Whiskers with single-minded determination. Harper stood in their path, firing until his rifle sparked and died from overuse. Plasma blasts tore at his armor. He staggered but pushed forward, engaging a Vraxian in brutal hand-to-hand combat to buy precious seconds. Dr. Faraday, wounded by shrapnel, struggled to maintain backup controls on a terminal nearby. In one final act of will, Whiskers sent out a telepathic wave that reverberated through Harper's consciousness. "You must retreat, human. If I die linked to this device, it collapses safely. But these Vraxians can stop me. Move." Harper hesitated, knowing that if he left, Whiskers might be captured or destroyed. Over the cat's mental pleading, he struggled with his decision. Then, seeing Dr. Faraday's condition worsen, he made his choice. He grabbed her arm, supporting her weight, and began the retreat to safety. "Thank you." He projected his thoughts toward Whiskers, not knowing if the entity could hear him. A faint reply echoed in his mind. "This is my purpose. Now go." The resonator's rings slowed to a halt. The core's pulsing light dimmed into a steady glow. A deep hum vibrated through the entire bay, and Whiskers underwent a final transformation. An explosion of white-silver light radiated outward, encasing the resonator in a collapsing prism of energy. Harper and Dr. Faraday sprinted for the maintenance hatch as the reactor room imploded in a silent shockwave. Alarms from above-level corridors signaled total power failure. As they scrambled through the tunnels, Dr. Faraday gasped. "Did you hear that?" "Hear what?" Harper asked, helping her navigate a collapsed section. "The cat, Whiskers. I heard it in my mind. It said, 'Tell them we wanted peace.'" Harper emerged into sublevel Gamma's evacuation corridor alone. Dr. Faraday had been picked up by a medical team they'd encountered en route. The Vraxian incursion was in panicked retreat as tremors rattled the passage. Helix announced, "Reactor bay polarity stabilized. Dimensional anomaly neutralized." Harper looked back through a shattered access port and saw a flicker of white light vanish. In place of the cat was only a handful of floating crystal fragments that disintegrated into motes of shimmering dust before his eyes. Back in the command center, Harper collapsed to his knees before Lieutenant Lin and Colonel Ortega, bloodied but alive. His mind felt empty, hollowed out by the experience. He couldn't find the words to recount Whiskers' cosmic identity without sounding deranged. Dr. Faraday, her arm in a makeshift sling, approached and knelt beside him. "You're a hero," she whispered, her eyes reflecting the same knowledge that burdened him. They had witnessed something beyond human understanding. Lieutenant Lin gently told Harper she had reviewed security feeds. "You never left your pack's side, and in the heart of the reactor bay, the cameras only show a blur of white light." She interpreted it as a heroic bluff to lure Vraxians onto the resonator, the simplest explanation her mind could accept. The days that followed were a blur of debriefings and medical evaluations. Harper found himself changed in ways he couldn't articulate. The telepathic connection with Whiskers had left echoes in his mind, images of alien worlds, memories of intelligence beyond human comprehension, and a persistent sense of cosmic responsibility. "I'd like to request a transfer," he told Lieutenant Lin during his final debriefing. She looked up from her tablet, surprised. You're on track for a commendation. Why would you want to transfer? To the Xenobiology Division, Harper replied. I have insights that might be valuable. Lieutenant Lin studied him for a long moment. This is about the cat, isn't it? Harper met her gaze steadily. It's about understanding what's out there before we encounter it again. We got lucky this time. Dr. Faraday, meanwhile, authored a confidential report on an unknown exotic energy signature and pushed for research into other benign extraterrestrial observers. The official records, however, classified the event as a Vraxian malfunction. Harper was awarded a commendation for bravery, but the cat was never mentioned in any official capacity. Only Helix, in its vast databanks, added a hidden marker in its logs. Resonator anomaly corrected. Source unclassified. Months later, Harper, now designated S-3170 in the Xenobiology Corps, sat alone in his new quarters, staring at a single tuft of lavender silver fur preserved in a cryoglass tube. Every so often, he felt a whisper at the edge of his mind. Do not lose hope. We observe, we learn. That evening, in the solitude of his quarters, Harper set aside a small portion of nutrient paste in his mess kit, just in case some traveler from beyond decided to visit again. The corridor lights flickered. He glanced up, thinking he saw a faint white silhouette in the corner. He smiled, knowing that Whisker's story was far from over. Whatever connection had been forged between them transcended the physical realm, a bridge between species that might one day lead to true understanding. Time passed, and Harper's role in the Xenobiology Division grew. He became known for his uncanny insights into alien psychology, though few knew the source of his knowledge. Dr. Faraday collaborated with him on several groundbreaking papers about theoretical interspecies communication, particularly focusing on nonverbal and telepathic possibilities. During a routine exploration mission to an uncharted moon in the Epsilon Eridani system, Harper's team encountered crystalline formations remarkably similar to the fragments he'd seen when Whiskers disappeared. The official report stated they were naturally occurring mineral deposits, but Harper knew better. One night, while examining samples in his lab, he felt a familiar presence. Turning quickly, he caught a glimpse of white fur disappearing around a corner. He followed, heart racing, but found only an empty corridor. On his workbench, however, the crystalline sample had rearranged itself into a perfect paw print. I knew you'd be back, Harper whispered to the empty room. The lights dimmed momentarily, and in that brief darkness, he felt the touch of fur against his hand. When the lights returned, a message glowed on his screen. The Vraxians have found another resonator. Prepare. Harper's journey had come full circle, from skeptical soldier to believer, from survivor to guardian. As he sent an urgent message to Dr. Faraday and Lieutenant Lin, now Admiral Lin, he realized that Whiskers had chosen him for a reason. The interdimensional observer had recognized something in him, a capacity for understanding that transcended species and conventional thinking. Helix, Harper called to the AI system in his lab. Begin recording new protocol file, Operation White Whisker. As he outlined the contingency plan for another dimensional incursion, Harper felt more alive than he had in years. The universe was larger and stranger than humanity had ever imagined. But they weren't facing it alone. Somewhere between dimensions, observers like Whiskers were watching, learning, and occasionally, when the need was greatest, intervening. And in the shadowed corner of his lab, unseen by human eyes, a white cat with lavender silver fur and unblinking amber eyes watched with approval. The human had learned well. Perhaps this species had potential after all. The preparations for the coming conflict would be extensive, but Harper knew one thing with certainty. When the time came, he would be ready. And this time, he wouldn't be fighting just for humanity, but for a peace that spanned dimensions. As if reading his thoughts, the air around him warmed slightly, and a familiar voice whispered in his mind. Together. This time. Harper smiled. Together, he agreed, and continued his work well into the night. The white cat occasionally visible at the edges of his perception, a guardian from beyond the stars who had chosen to walk alongside humanity's uncertain path into the cosmic unknown. 16 months after his encounter with Whiskers, Harper stood in a high-security briefing room aboard the flagship vessel, Intrepid. Admiral Lin had assembled a task force specifically designed to address interdimensional threats, though officially it was labeled Anomalous Physics Research Division. Dr. Faraday, now the lead scientific advisor to the military on xenobiology, activated a holographic display showing the Tau Ceti system. Our long-range sensors detected energy fluctuations matching the resonator signature from Nova Epsilon. The Vraxians have established a research station on the fourth moon of Tau Ceti E. Admiral Lin, her hair now streaked with gray, but her posture as commanding as ever, turned to Harper. Specialist 3170, your insights have proven invaluable in preparing for this contingency. What's your assessment? Harper studied the display, feeling that familiar tingle at the base of his skull, the remnant of his connection with Whiskers. They're attempting to harness dimensional energy on a much larger scale. Based on the power readings, this resonator could affect not just a moon, but potentially the entire Tau Ceti system. And your unofficial sources? Admiral Lin asked carefully. Everyone in the room knew about Harper's uncanny predictive abilities, though few understood their origin. Harper hesitated, then decided on honesty. I've been receiving impressions, warnings. The same entity that helped us at Nova Epsilon is concerned. This technology wasn't meant for either humans or Vraxians. It's like giving nuclear weapons to medieval knights. Dr. Faraday stepped forward. We've developed countermeasures based on the energy signature from the previous incident. She displayed a schematic of a device that resembled a crystalline lattice. We're calling it the Whisker Protocol. It should dampen the resonator's effects long enough for a team to disable it. The problem, Harper added, is that we need someone who can interface with the resonator directly, someone who understands its dimensional properties. Admiral Lin's eyes narrowed. Someone like you? Harper nodded slowly. The telepathic contact left traces. I can sense things others can't. I've been training with Dr. Faraday to enhance these abilities. It's true, Dr. Faraday confirmed. Harper's neural patterns have been permanently altered. He's developed a sensitivity to dimensional fluctuations that our instruments can barely detect. Admiral Lin looked troubled. I'm not sending my people on a suicide mission, Harper. With respect, Admiral, we don't have a choice. If that resonator activates fully, we're looking at the potential collapse of an entire star system. Millions of colonists would die. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Finally, Admiral Lin nodded. Assemble your team. You have operational authority on this mission, Specialist Harper. As the briefing concluded, Harper lingered in the room, staring at the holographic display of Tau Ceti. He felt a familiar presence beside him and glanced down to see a flicker of white, there for an instant, then gone. I could use your help again, he whispered. The display flickered momentarily, and the schematics of the Vraxian base rearranged to highlight a weakness in their security system. A maintenance tunnel, not unlike the one they'd used on Nova Epsilon. Harper smiled. Whiskers was still watching. The mission to Tau Ceti was authorized under the codename Operation Feline. Harper selected a small team of specialists, including Dr. Faraday and Lieutenant Hayes, who had been promoted after Nova Epsilon. Their ship, a stealth corvette named Whisper, was equipped with the latest cloaking technology and the experimental Whisker Protocol device. As they approached the Vraxian moon base, Harper felt the resonator's presence like a migraine building behind his eyes. "They've already begun the initialization sequence," he informed the bridge crew. "We have less than 6 hours before it reaches critical mass." The infiltration went smoother than expected, almost as if something was interfering with Vraxian security systems. Harper led his team through a series of maintenance tunnels, guided by intuition that felt less like his own and more like a gentle nudge from an unseen companion. When they finally reached the resonator chamber, Harper froze in awe. This device dwarfed the one on Nova Epsilon, a massive array of crystalline rings spinning around a core of pure energy that bent light in impossible ways. Vraxian technicians scuttled around it like insects, making adjustments and feeding power into its hungry maw. "It's beautiful," Dr. Faraday whispered, "and terrifying." Hayes checked his scanner. "Power levels are rising faster than projected. We may not have 6 hours." Harper felt a pressure building in his mind, a familiar presence trying to communicate. He closed his eyes, allowing the connection to form. "They do not understand what they awaken." Whisker's voice echoed in his thoughts. "The boundaries between dimensions are thin here. If they tear through, both our worlds suffer." "How do we stop it?" Harper asked aloud, causing Dr. Faraday to look at him with concern. "The resonator must be recalibrated, not destroyed. Destruction would release all the energy at once. I will guide your hands, but you must be my vessel in your dimension." Harper opened his eyes, determination hardening his features. "I need to get to the control console. Hayes, create a diversion on the south end of the chamber. Dr. Faraday, deploy the Whisker Protocol device to dampen the energy output." As his team moved into position, Harper felt a strange sensation, as if his body was no longer entirely his own. His hands began to move with precision he didn't possess, typing commands into the Vraxian interface as if he'd been born understanding their language. Alarms blared as the Vraxians detected the intrusion. Plasma fire erupted across the chamber, forcing Hayes and his security team into defensive positions. Dr. Faraday activated the Whisker Protocol, causing the resonator's pulsing energy to dim temporarily. "Whatever you're doing, hurry!" she called to Harper as she worked to maintain the dampening field. Harper's fingers flew across the alien controls, guided by Whisker's consciousness, partially merged with his own. The sensation was both exhilarating and terrifying. He could feel the vastness of Whisker's understanding, glimpses of dimensions beyond human comprehension. A squad of Vraxian elite guards burst through the main entrance, their weapons charging. Hayes and his team were pinned down, unable to provide cover. Dr. Faraday's dampening device began to falter under the strain of the resonator's growing power. "We're out of time!" Hayes shouted. In that moment of crisis, Harper felt Whisker's presence strengthen. A flash of white light erupted from his hands, spreading across the control console. The resonator's rings began to rotate in the opposite direction, its energy turning inward instead of outward. A Vraxian guard raised his weapon, targeting Harper's exposed position. There was no time to dodge, nowhere to hide. Harper closed his eyes, continuing the recalibration sequence even as he anticipated the searing pain of plasma fire. Instead, he heard gasps from both his team and the Vraxians. Opening his eyes, he saw a translucent barrier of white energy surrounding him, and standing before him, half materialized in their dimension, was Whiskers in his true form, a towering crystalline entity with features that reminded Harper of both a cat and something far more cosmic. "Finish it," Whiskers commanded, holding the barrier against increasingly desperate Vraxian attacks. With a final sequence of commands, Harper completed the recalibration. The resonator's energy signature changed from a violent red to a calm blue. Instead of tearing a hole between dimensions, it now created a stable bridge, a controlled portal. The Vraxians fell back in confusion as their weapon transformed into something entirely different. From the portal emerged more entities like Whiskers, though each had unique, crystalline patterns. They didn't attack. They simply stood, observing. "What's happening?" Dr. Faraday asked, awestruck. Harper smiled as understanding dawned. Diplomatic contact. Whiskers wasn't just preventing destruction. He was preparing for this moment. One of the crystalline beings approached the Vraxian commander, extending what might have been a limb. After a moment of hesitation, the commander touched it with his neural appendage. Both seemed to shudder, then relax. "Understanding begins with communication," Whiskers explained to Harper. "The Vraxians sought power because they feared extinction. We can show them another path." The standoff in the chamber gradually transformed into something unprecedented. The first three-way diplomatic contact between humans, Vraxians, and the interdimensional beings that Whiskers called the Observers. Hours later, aboard the Whisper, Admiral Lin received Harper's report with stunned silence. "You're telling me that not only did you prevent a catastrophe, but you've initiated first contact with an entirely new species and brokered a preliminary peace with the Vraxians?" Harper nodded, exhausted, but elated. "The Observers have been watching us for centuries, Admiral. They've been waiting for the right moment to make contact. The resonator technology was originally theirs. The Vraxians found fragments of it and misunderstood its purpose. And this Whiskers is their ambassador? More like an advanced scout. He was sent to assess whether we were ready for contact. My actions on Nova Epsilon convinced him that at least some humans could be trusted." Admiral Lin shook her head in amazement. "The diplomatic corps is going to have a field day with this. 3-species negotiations weren't covered in any training manual I've ever seen." Dr. Faraday, who had been analyzing data from the encounter, looked up from her console. "The scientific implications are staggering. The Observers exist partially in dimensions we can't perceive. Their understanding of physics makes our most advanced theories look primitive." Harper felt a familiar presence and turned to see Whiskers, in his cat form, sitting on a nearby console, visible to everyone in the room for the first time. Admiral Lin stared in shock as the cat inclined its head in what seemed like a respectful greeting. "This is only the beginning," Whiskers projected, his thoughts now audible to everyone present. "There are threats in the cosmos that neither humans nor Vraxians can face alone. We Observers have watched civilizations rise and fall across countless dimensions. We intervene only rarely, but your situation is unique." "How so?" Admiral Lin asked, quickly adapting to conversing with a telepathic cat. "The resonator technology creates ripples across dimensional boundaries. Those ripples have attracted attention, not all of it benevolent. Together, we have a better chance of surviving what comes next." Harper felt a chill at these words. What exactly is coming? Whisker's amber eyes seemed to glow with internal light. That is a conversation for another time. For now, celebrate this victory. You have taken your first steps into a larger universe. As the debriefing continued, Harper found himself reflecting on how far he'd come from that chaotic evacuation on Nova Epsilon. The cat that had appeared in the midst of crisis had changed not just his life, but potentially the course of human history. Later, alone in his quarters, Harper found Whiskers waiting for him. The cat looked more substantial now, less likely to fade away into another dimension. "Are you staying this time?" Harper asked. Whiskers jumped onto his bunk, circling once before settling into a comfortable position. "I have been assigned as liaison to humanity. It seems fitting that I begin with the human who first showed me kindness." Harper smiled, remembering the mayonnaise sandwich he'd offered the mysterious cat in the midst of evacuation. It wasn't much of a welcome, yet it revealed your character. In crisis, you showed compassion for something unknown. That quality is rare and precious. As Harper prepared for sleep, he realized that his simple ambition to finish his service tour and attend tech school had evolved into something far greater. He had become a bridge between species, a translator of the unknown, a guardian of dimensional boundaries. And beside him, purring softly on his pillow, was a cat that was not a cat, an observer from beyond who had chosen to walk alongside humanity as they took their tentative first steps into a vaster, stranger universe than they had ever imagined. The lights dimmed automatically, but in the darkness, Whisker's crystalline fur glowed with a gentle lavender-silver light, a reminder that even in the darkest places, understanding could illuminate the path forward. "Sleep well, Harper," Whiskers projected softly. "Tomorrow, we begin preparing for what lies beyond the stars." And for the first time since Nova Epsilon, Harper slept without dreams of destruction, only visions of countless worlds and the infinite possibilities that awaited.